إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار أما بعد. My brothers and sisters, I advise you with the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you fear Him and that you are obedient to Him and dutiful with respect to the rights that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed upon you. And likewise, I advise you to be callers to khair and islah, that you are individuals who are known for calling to that which is good and reconciling between the people. And do not be from those who act corruptly and cause mischief fil ard, that they cause difficulties and disputes and corruption in the earth. And we know that from the people they are those who are miftahan lil khair and mighlaqan lil shar, that they are from the people those who open the door to goodness and they are closers of doors to evil. And from the people are those who open the doors to evil and they close the doors to khair. Just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ قالوا إنما نحن مصلحون ألا إنهم هم المفسدون ولكن لا يشعرون. And when it is said to them, stop causing corruption in the land, they say, all we're doing is reconciling. We are people who rectify. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about them, أَلَا إِنَّهُمْ هُمُ الْمُفْسِدُونَ. Rather, they are the ones who are causing the corruption. They are the corrupt ones, but they do not perceive it. Why? Because these people, though outwardly they claim that they are rectifying, they are making peace, they are mending the disputes between the people, in reality, the fitna maker causes splits between the believers. Wallahu ya'lamu al-mufsida min al-muslihi. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the corrupt one from the rectifier. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will recompense everyone for their deeds and give each of us that which we have earned. So Allah knows whether you are rectifiers or whether you are people who open the doors to fitna and incite hatred between the hearts of the brothers and sisters. So the path to rectification, my brothers and sisters, the path to rectification are many and numerous. And each of us is required to play his part according to our ability. So we call to Allah, that is rectification. That is from the paths of Islah. So the subul of Islah, or the paths towards rectification, they begin with the most important affair, the calling to Tawheed, calling to Islam, calling to the worship of Allah, enjoining that which is good, prohibiting that which is evil, calling the people to beneficial knowledge and teaching them that which is good for them in this life and in the hereafter. So these are from the greatest parts of rectification. And the presence of the believers in the ummah who fulfill this task protects the ummah from the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, وَمَا كَانَ رَبُّكَ لِيُهْلِكَ الْقُرَى بِظُلْمٍ وَأَهْلُهَا مُصْلِحُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, and your Lord would never destroy the towns wrongfully, while the people of these towns are muslihun, are rectifiers. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not destroy a people who rectify and they enjoin that which is good and they prohibit that which is evil. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated before that ayah that there were generations who came before. And there were some among those people that came before that there were a few among them who would enjoin the good and they would prohibit the evil. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved them. Just as He said, فَلَوْلَا كَانَ مِنَ الْقُرُونِ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ أُولُو بَقِيَّةٍ يَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْفَسَادِ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِمَّنْ أَنْجَيْنَا مِنْهُمْ. And if only there had been among the generations that came before you people of wisdom, people who cared, people who had discernment. If only there were, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned, people who came before you with this characteristic of discernment. And they had prohibited corruption in the earth. But there were only a few who would do that. So Allah describes them, إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِمَّنْ أَنْجَيْنَا مِنْهُمْ. So there were a few of them who would do that from among them, whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved. So this group, those small, they were upon goodness and they remained upon goodness. And Allah saved them when His punishment came down. And many people were persistent upon sins, upon evil deeds, and they paid no attention to the calls of the virtuous people when the people were telling them, don't make ifsad fil ard, don't make corruption in the earth. Stop causing fitna. Stop causing hatred between the brothers. Stop causing hatred and enmity between a husband and his wife. Between the people of Sunnah. Stop spreading tales. So the righteous ones would warn them from mischief and corruption and wicked deeds. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's adhab came to them and destroyed them, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explained that He did not destroy a town except when its people transgressed against themselves. And those whom were righteous, then Allah would save them. Those who enjoined the good, prohibited the evil, rectified the affairs, Allah would save them. Shaykh al-Fawzan, hafidhahullah ta'ala, said, and Allah never destroyed a town ever that was obedient to Him and righteous. Allah would not destroy those townships where people were righteous and good. Just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in the verses that we mentioned. For this reason, Allah commanded this ummah that they should remain within it, those who enjoin good, and they forbid evil, and they give sincere advice, and they warn the people. وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. So let there arise from you a group who call to all that which is good. They enjoin that which is right, they prohibit that which is wrong, and they are the ones who are the successful. So when the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam fulfills this command, the command of enjoining good, prohibiting evil, doing righteous deeds, rectifying the affairs, making peace between the people. When the ummah of Muhammad or the group within the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the rectifiers, if they were to do that, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would save them from His punishment. Allah would save them from destruction. That destruction that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He sent down upon the nations that came before, who abandoned this fundamental of the deen. So the rectifier fulfills that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made obligatory upon him. Just as He said, وَالَّذِينَ يُمَسِّكُونَ بِالْكِتَابِ وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَإِنَّا لَا نُضِيعُ أَجْرَ الْمُصْلِحِينَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and those who hold fast to the book, meaning to the revelation sent from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those who hold fast to that which is in the commandments of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَأَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ, and they establish the prayer, then Allah said, indeed He will not cause the reward of the rectifiers to be lost. That is the reward of the muslihin, the reward of those who rectify and correct. So from the types of rectification is to rectify between Ahlus Sunnati wal Jama'ah, to rectify that which occurs of disputes between brothers, between ourselves as people of Sunnah, to reconcile who shaitan has caused and has sown enmity between them. So shaitan comes and he puts something into the ear of one person, whispering into the ear of another person, something that settles in the heart or in the soul, causing him to have bad suspicions towards his brother and evil thoughts towards him. So shaitan comes such that they begin to hate each other, boycott each other, stop talking to each other, even speak against each other behind their backs, and having bad and evil thoughts towards them. That's what shaitan does between the people of Sunnah, the people of Tawheed. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those who rectify between them. So Allah has said, فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَأَصْلِحُوا ذَاتَ بَيْنِكُمْ. Fear Allah. Fear Allah and reconcile the differences between you. Fear Allah and make peace. Fear Allah, rectify. Fear Allah, mend. Repair the damage that shaitan has done between the hearts. Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said in a narration collected by Abu Dawud and At-Tirmidhi, also by Ibn Hibban, who said it is sahih, from Abu Darda, that Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, should I not inform you of an affair that is better in levels than optional fasting, optional prayer, and optional sadaqah? They said, yes, Ya Rasulullah, tell us. He said, Islahu dhatil bayn, to mend the differences between disputants. Meaning putting things right and making peace between the people. And then he said, for indeed corruption between the people, huwa al-haliqa. He said, causing corruption between the people and spoiling friendships, then it is shaving away. Not shaving away of the hair, he said, but rather it is shaving of the religion. So making islah between the people is better than the voluntary fasting and sadaqah and praying. Rectifying that which shaitan wants between the believers, that they hate each other. So some of that settles in the hearts. And a person may carry that hatred for years. Or he may make it bigger and bigger. It begins with 2 people and it ends with 200 people. That people stop talking to each other, groups of Ahlus Sunnah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in His book, لا خير في كثير من نجواهم إلا من أمر بصدقة أو معروف أو إصلاح بين الناس ومن يفعل ذلك ابتغاء مرضات الله فسوف نؤتيه أجرا عظيما. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, there is no good in much of their private gatherings. There is no good in them. And that's the origin. In much of the private gatherings that the people have, there is no good in these private gatherings. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes an exception. إِلَّا مَنْ أَمَرَ بِصَدَقَةٍ, except for the one who enjoins good, meaning enjoins sadaqah, enjoins charity within them. Or that he commands with that which is good. أو إصلاح بين الناس, or in that gathering he brings peace and reconciliation between the people. And whomsoever does that, seeking the pleasure of Allah, then Allah has said, then indeed we shall give to him a mighty reward. Shaykh al-Fawzan hafidhullah ta'ala, commenting upon this ayah, he said, there is no good in what most of the people conceal from others in private gatherings, except if in those private gatherings there is the giving of sadaqah in secret, or commanding with good, or to mend rifts between disputants concerning blood or wealth or the honor of Muslims. And whomsoever does that, وَمَنْ يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ ابْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ فَسَوْفَ نُؤْتِيهِ أَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. And whomsoever does that, seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then indeed we shall give to him a mighty reward. A mighty reward for what, ya ikhwan? For the one who does that, sadaqah, enjoining good, and that he wants to make peace between the people. Otherwise, these gatherings are of no benefit. So the affair of rectifying and mending rifts between our brothers, between our sisters, is so important that Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said in a hadith in Bukhari and Muslim, he said, he is not a liar, the one who mends rifts between the people and narrates a good saying or says a good word. Meaning that sometimes a person, when he sees that his brothers have enmity towards each other, then it is okay for him to narrate a story that will put something into the heart of one of the disputants that softens his heart towards the one that he had dislike or enmity towards. On an occasion, as Bukhari reports in his Sahih, that the people of Quba, that they started to fight each other. And it reached such a stage that some threw stones at others. So when Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam heard about that, he said, "Idhabu bina nuslihu baynahum." He said to his companions, come with us, let's go and make peace between them. Because that's the origin of the affair. The origin is that we seek to make peace between the believers. So regardless of where the dispute is, the intent of the believer is, yes, he may have some dispute with his brother. He may have something in his heart. And this is even worse when it comes into the family. Between two brothers, between relatives, even between a husband and his wife, between a father and his son. The importance of making islah, enjoining good, seeking nothing but the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oh, islahim bayna nas. Seeking peace among the people, rectification, so that they stop boycotting each other, so they stop speaking against each other. These are from the important affairs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam with. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. From the types of rectification is to rectify between a husband and wife who differ with each other. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands with rectification. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encourages that between the believers because of the fact that shaitan is pleased when a marriage breaks down. It is from the affairs over which shaitan will leave his throne that is upon the ocean to embrace the devil from his armies who causes a husband and wife to break up from each other. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said in his book, وَإِنْ امْرَأَةٌ خَافَتْ مِنْ بَعْلِهَا نُشُوزًا أَوْ إِعْرَاضًا فَلَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْهِمَا أَنْ يُصْلِحَا بَيْنَهُمَا صُلْحًا وَالصُّلْحُ خَيْرٌ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, the meaning of which is that if a woman fears cruelty or desertion on her husband's behalf, then there is no harm for either of them to make peace between them. And making sulh, making peace, is better. وَالصُّلْحُ خَيْرٌ. Take that as a principle, barakallahu feekum, in your everyday lives. Peace and reconciliation is khair. It is good. And this is something that I say often, that Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, we are small in number amongst the majority of the people who are upon bid'ah and shirk and Brelwiyah and Quburiyah and Sufiyah and all of the other sects and firaq of misguidance. Ahlul Sunnah, the Salafiyun, are few. So it is important that our hearts are united, that we pay attention to the affair of peace and reconciliation between ourselves. Because the strength of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, that from the greatest of the strengths of Ahlul Sunnah is its unity. So when they dispute between each other, then their weakness departs from them, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in his book. So reconciliation between parties. And that is because reconciliation between spouses, that it will build a good home. It will establish strong families. And a society based upon that is founded. A society is founded upon a strong marriage, a cohesive family, a cohesive community, where people, that they are following traditional values that are based in revelation and scripture. So therefore, my brothers and sisters, don't marry in haste, without reflection, without examination, without looking into the person. So when you marry the person that you're marrying, you did it properly, not with haste. Not just quickly rushing into things. And likewise, when it comes to dispute between a husband and wife, don't be hasty to leave the marriage. Don't run away from the marriage in haste. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, وَإِن تُصْلِحُوا وَتَتَّقُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ غَفُورًا رَحِيمًا. That if you make peace and you fear Allah, then indeed Allah is the forgiving, most merciful. Make peace, fear Allah. So your duty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you will find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with you, oft forgiving, most merciful. So therefore, when these disputes occur between a husband and wife, seek the advice of the elders, seek the advice of your parents, seek the advice of elders within the community. Not just your peers and your friends, because your friend will support you. Whereas an elder in the community, even if they know you, they will advise you with sincerity. And this is especially so for women. who find their life after divorce more difficult than men. It is hard for a woman who is divorced to get on with her life. So my sisters, fear Allah. My sisters, fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And be very cautious about initiating divorce. And don't always think to yourself that the grass is greener on the other side. That the grass in the other valley is better and greener. It is not. Be careful. And from experience, we know that most divorces end in regret and remorse, mostly on behalf of the woman. So prevention is better than cure. Seek rectification. Remove enmity. And remove the desire for revenge from your hearts. وَالْكَاذِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Allah has described the people who are righteous and pious, who will receive Jannah, whose expanse is like the expanse of the heavens and the earth. Who are they? From their characteristics, وَالْكَاذِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ, those who control their anger. Because a person may say something in anger that causes him to separate from his brother, or even cause the marriage to break down. كَاذِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ, that they pardon the people much. That they are oft pardoning. They forgive, they overlook. And Allah loves the doers of good. I want to finish with a statement of Shaykh al-Fawzan, Hafidhahullah Ta'ala. He said, and we find that some people are lazy when it comes to making peace. They leave the people to differ. And they leave the people to cause corruption, while they have the means and the ability to mend the rifts. But shaitan causes a person to forsake rectification. Shaitan whispers to him, why are you bothering yourself? Why are you burdening yourself? Leave them alone. You're fine as you are. So they leave that which Allah has obligated of rectifying when you have the ability to rectify. Sometimes even a mother and father won't get involved to save their daughter's marriage. And we've heard of cases like that. A father won't get involved to save his own daughter's marriage. A brother who knows a brother, and he can say to him, Ya akhi, you need to stop this dispute that you have. You need to stop it. Seek refuge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and make dua to Allah for rectification. Even that a person won't say it. Oh, he's my friend. Oh, I can't, she's my daughter. Oh, I can't, she's my sister. Tell your sister, if she's your sister, she's married. Tell her, fear Allah. Or if it's your brother with his wife, tell him, fear Allah, ya akhi. So we can't be from those who stop making peace and rectifying between the people when we have the ability. Then he said, and some people just incite fitna and conflict between the believers, causing further rifts and differing between them, between brothers, between couples and others. So he becomes a worker for shaitan. This is the one who closes the doors to good and opens the doors to evil. He encourages those who differ to continue with their differences and disputes. He encourages one side even to speak again. It's not even his issue. But he will put himself in the issue. Instead of making peace, he will incite them against their brother instead of making peace. So he said, be careful of these inciters to fitna. Stay away from them. And warn your brothers from listening to them. Ulaika hizbu shaitan. For indeed, they are the party of shaitan. Inna hizba shaitan humul khasirun. And indeed, it is the party of shaitan who are the losers. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from those who are muslihun and not mufsidun. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that which is in our hearts of issues with our brothers, with our families, with our relatives, with the community, of Ahlus Sunnah and of the Salafiyin, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rectifies the affairs and causes us to be from those who are at one with our brothers, united. والحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله